Actually, hold on. I had troubles. Nope. Nope. I think we're live. Hold on. We're going back to a countdown, people.
Well, aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Did you enjoy the double countdown that just happened? Always an adventure here on PWTorch NXT. We're talking NXT for July the 16th, 2024. And when I say that date aloud, it makes me realize it is the birthday of my best friend from high school, still one of my best friends. And I should say something to him, but here I am talking to you about wrestling. I am Kelly Wells, and you can find me on social media, places at Spooky Milk. Nate, who are you?
At Nate Lindberg on the social medias as well. You could also check out things I do at natelindberg.com.
All right. So I don't think I knew that this show was going to end with Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen. You knew there would be something after the main event because the main event wasn't a big enough deal on its own. Apologies to Duke Hudson, but he's not the guy who's going to take the championship from Oba Femi. He's just not. Although, on the other hand, it's easy to believe every time Femi's in that ring that he could be losing that match just because they want to move him on to bigger and better things. So they could have done a thing with Ridge Holland here if they really wanted to. They just didn't do that. And afterwards, we get Briggs and Jensen leaving, and they're outside the building, and Jensen demands a no disqualification match. So I guess those guys might end the show next week again too, but they might open it. At any rate, we can talk Duke versus Oba, which I thought was a perfectly decent Hoss fight. Hudson getting some underdog offense, kind of like a much smaller man would. This had some similarities to the Wes Lee match, I thought, even though Hudson does not look or move like Wes Lee. I mean, he kind of moves like him. But yeah, 11:33, your winner, Oba Femi, still North American champion. Strutting to the ring like he owns the frickin' place, because he does. And then we got Briggs and Jensen, and Jensen apparently has his own personal driver. So color me surprised about that. Nate, talk main event.
I'm glad that he does have a driver, because if they're kind of going with this whole like alcoholism thing, like I don't know if showing him getting behind the wheel of a car is like the greatest idea in the world. But yeah, I'm intrigued by this. Like, we've been wondering what Jensen's going to be doing for a while now, and then all of a sudden, past few weeks, he's kind of just shown up and attacked things and attacked people and just kind of been a bit of a nuisance. It's an interesting segment, or it's not segment. Sorry, it's an interesting story. As we've talked about on the show before, like I'm not always a big fan of taking of this type of an angle, and kind of taking, something as serious as alcoholism and bringing it into an entertainment type world, especially wrestling, which kind of tries to blur the lines between reality and story. But at the same time, it's not like he's been doing much else. So it's cool to at least be able to see him in a different role than he's been in when he was part of the tag team with Brooks Jensen, Josh Briggs rather. I am hoping that I'm kind of expecting this to, like you said, either open the show or close the show. I think it's going to depend on what else they may build up for next week to see, maybe over social media through the course of the week or whatnot, to see if it, if there's something else that could main event the show. But at least as of right now, I'm almost leaning towards this main eventing based on it being in the kind of the final slot of the night after our main event. Um, should be an interesting match, and I'm kind of half expecting to see Josh Briggs win again, and kind of continue the story of Jensen rather, floundering and not being at his best and things like that, and then maybe we see a bit of a redemption story, or the feud between the two of them, kind of culminate at maybe the Great American Bash or something like that, because we do have the Great American Bash coming up on Sci-Fi, not USA, which is going to throw me off for a couple weeks. So it could be something like that. But yeah, definitely looking forward to it. The main event between Oba Femi and Duke Hudson, I thoroughly enjoyed. I didn't think Duke Hudson had a chance of winning. As Kelly said to open the show, he's not the person to beat Oba Femi. Anybody, the person who's going to beat Oba Femi, it's in a way, in a similar way, it's kind of like who can beat Brock Lesnar. I think it's got to be like that. You've got to treat Oba Femi like that as a bit of an attraction. And because whoever finally does pin him 1, 2, 3, whether it be cleanly or not, they're going to get a bit of a rub just based off of that, and because of how strongly they built Oba Femi. So yeah, like I said, didn't think it was going to be Duke Hudson. There was certainly a part of me cheering for him, because I've grown to like Duke Hudson over the years and things like that. But I still was rooting for my man Oba Femi to win there. Like you said, it was I thought it was a good match. Oba Femi, actually, really both Oba Femi and Duke Hudson, they move so much faster than you expect them to. So I think that their styles lent themselves pretty well to one another. Made for an enjoyable match. And looking forward to seeing what's next for Oba Femi. That guy is an absolute beast.
BJ in the chat says Oba Femi is a future WWE champion, and yes, that is a factual statement. He is. Might as well roll it in with Brooks Jensen versus Javon Evans. This was early on in the show, and Josh Briggs was in his corner. I was very amused by the fact that they had a little session before the match where they said, Brooks said, "I don't need you out here," and Josh said, "You're my responsibility." And I just thought, any time before you got to the ramp would have been the time to have this conversation. But apparently they're going to have it here. Brooks Jensen, of course, has to do the job to Javon Evans here as Javon gets his win back, and Javon starts on the rehabilitation trail towards the top of the card. Again, I don't know if he will make it all the way to the top again or if they'll take their time with him. It seems like there are things going on there, so they should take their time a little bit. I guess we'll get to Trick and his weird little scene in a minute, but Javon Evans beat Brooks Jensen in 8:58, and I thought this was a pretty serviceable big versus small. I actually, as much as we've swiped at Brooks Jensen for being all the Brooks Jensen that he is, he's actually pretty decent. Like right now, what he's doing, I think, is kind of working. And it's not, I don't know what the ceiling on it is, but I think it's pretty okay. And of course, Javon can do things that you're not supposed to be able to do with your body, but it'll be interesting to see how long he can sustain that offense as he gets older and his body fills out and just changes inevitably. But let's hope, right? So Evans over Jensen, 8:58. Any thoughts on that match?
So I again thoroughly enjoyed this match. Like you said, Javon Evans can move in ways that the body shouldn't move. Every single time I see him in a match or in a physical segment, he does something that just makes me go, what? So absolutely love watching him. I think the ceiling is pretty high for him. He's going to work on his mic work a little bit. And I think his natural accent it makes it a little bit hard sometimes to understand what he's saying on the mic. So I think that's really the only thing he has to work on. Other than that, I mean, I think the sky is the limit for this guy. Super entertaining. He always has the fans behind him. And that it factor that we always talk about. I mean, he's got it. Hands down, he's got it. As you said, Brooks Jensen. This is probably. I don't want to necessarily definitively say it's the best match I've ever seen him in, but it's probably the best match I've ever seen him in. He looked vicious. He looked like he had a bit more of a mean streak to him than we've seen in in any other match that he's had, which definitely lends itself to the whole story that they're telling right now. With kind of the alcoholism and kind of Brooks kind of losing his way, I guess, and getting a bit more of an edge to him as we saw in that final segment tonight. It's like I said, it's going to be an interesting, interesting story that they tell here with Brooks and Josh. There's just so much history there between the two of them that they've had over the past few years at NXT. So there's a lot to draw from. There's so much where they can draw from to tell an additional story here. So like I said, I'm really, really looking forward to that. Like I said, yeah, the match itself, I think, was serviceable as what I believe what you said. Very enjoyable. I'd like to see Javon Evans maybe start picking up a few wins here and there, but this was definitely Brooke Jensen's match to win.
We open the show rather, with Wesley and the Rascalz, or do we just say the Rascalz? I guess we can say a few things against Gallus. Zach Wentz, when he made the tag, got the welcome back chant after Luis Miguel started this. But they three face Gallus, and Gallus's job is to job. So in about 12 minutes, that is what they did. It's kind of a rinse and repeat for Gallus. They beat somebody low level, and then they lose to somebody mid level, and then they're back where they were, which valuable, but whatever. Joe Hendry, say your name, he appears, and he did. He showed up, sat in on commentary. Didn't say a lot of specifics about why he was there, but later on, Gallus was licking their wounds backstage, and one of them, I believe Joe, said Joe Hendry's name, and he appeared. Well, his music played, and then he appeared, and he explained that's how it happens. So I don't know why Joe Hendry in this spot, but but I will take Joe Hendry in any spot. So I was happy to see him. As for the match, I don't know, what does any Gallus match do for me? I'm not sure, but the Rascalz were really fun to see together as a trio, and it seemed like the fans were really digging that as well. Hendry had his scene later with Gallus, and you know what? We talked about that, but I didn't write it down a second time, so I don't have to cross it out. On this,
there you go.
This opening sensation. I was going to say sensation. That's a little strong. This
Jason
opening
Sensation,
attract.
Part of this.
That. Mm-hmm.
Not somebody I thought I was going to even mention tonight. No, I actually very much enjoyed the opening segment, the opening match here tonight. I was going to say MSK, the Rascalz versus Gallus. When MSK was in NXT, it was just Wentz back when I don't even remember what his name was now. But before he, left NXT, it was just him and Wesley. They didn't necessarily do it
Nash
for me. Like
Carter.
Nash Carter. That's right. That's what it was.
Okay.
they didn't necessarily do it for me. Like they, which I couldn't understand. I never really understood why they didn't do it for me. They flashy in the ring. They had some great entrance music. I mean, a lot of energy and things like that. But they never captured me. It wasn't until Wesley went off on his own that I really became like a big fan of what he does. But man, to see the three of them back in the ring together tonight was I thought it was fantastic. Even Gallus, like their performance tonight was really good. Matter of fact, one of my friends, Jobin, he's jumped on the show with me here a couple times. He uh, they were even saying that this was probably one of the better tag matches that they've watched in recent memory. Now, granted, they haven't watched as many matches as probably you or I have, Kelly, but it really drew them into the beginning of the show, and kind of set the tone for the rest of the show, which I thought the pacing of tonight's show and really the rest of the content was really good, as opposed to a couple of weeks ago. The go home before was the heat wave, was a little lackluster. Um, Again, a lot of energy here. I'm really hoping we wind up seeing more of the Rascalz here in NXT. Not that I don't want to see Wesley do things on his own, but it's almost like they weren't expecting to be able to have this type of a reunion. Maybe they've known for like a month or so now, but it's like they're just really having fun. You can tell that they're having fun, being together and working together once again, even though they're technically contracted to two completely separate companies. So definitely looking forward to that. Joe Hendry's, it was, I think, is a little odd maybe that he injected himself here and put himself on commentary in a way. But man, with the reaction that Joe Hendry's getting, you said it yourself. You'll take Joe Hendry any chance you get. So I think putting him on the show in any capacity is a great idea. It's probably going to boost ratings a little bit. Not that I super pay attention to ratings or anything like that, but it probably help with some show retention as well. He shows up. You might see him again later on in the night, which we did. You say his name and he appears. I don't have the graphic queued up. I wish I did. Although BJ said it earlier, say his name and he appears. I believe in Nate Lindberg. I like that. So I had to throw that up on the screen because why not? But yeah, I think that's probably what I got about the opening match.
All right, let's talk our champion, NXT champion, Ethan Page. He's talking with Ava, and Oro Mensah jumps him as often. And Ethan, to try to get out of this match, says that he's going to defend his championship tonight. And he throws out a name, and the name he comes up with is Dante Chen. This is the tried and true villain champion. To pretend that he's a fighting champion, chooses somebody who is not very high up on the card. And that is the story they tell. Perfectly decent story to tell with Dante Chen at this point in his career. So got that a little bit later. That's actually the mid-show match, I think. And Ethan Page does win that in 4:17. Chen got in a lot of the offense, but Ethan Page's offense hits harder, and so he was able to finish Dante Chen. Oro Mensah jumped him again. One more time, we had Page and an interviewer later on, because during that scuffle with Oro Mensah, Oro got the visual pinfall on Ethan Page, and I thought it was a nice touch later that Page yelled, sorry, BJ just threw me here. Brock Benningfield threw me here in the chat saying Oro looked like he blindly picked clothes from Goodwill and put them on. I used to work with a guy who looked like he did that. Oro does have, it seems haphazard to me. Like I'm past the days when I really got, did I ever really get style? I never cared about style, but But anyway, that threw me just a bit. Oro got the visual pin. That's my point.
Yes.
And then it clearly rattled Ethan Page because he said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me. And then he yelled, and he didn't pin me. So I guess we're still going with that. It seems like Oro is still on a very, very different level. And for as much as they've done with him, I don't think that he will seriously challenge. I mean, he'll get his match, but I don't know if it'll be on a major show. This might be something that they put on your 2-week Great American Bash. But on the Page, Chen, and Oro saga, Nate.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there's anybody in the company deserving of a match for the NXT title, it's Dante Chen. So glad to see we got him there. They made the wrong decision by not having Dante Chen win, but I guess I can forgive them for that. No, I mean, all kidding aside, you know, I mean, I think Dante Chen was a good opponent here because they had been building him up. You know, and he's one of the people in NXT that's been there for God, I mean, forever at this point. You know, and I think he is deserving of a title shot. Didn't think there was a chance in hell he was going to actually win it as much as I wanted to see that happen. But I think it was a good spot for him. You know, you know, he's able to put on a good match with Ethan Page. You know, I don't know if Ethan Page is still adjusting to the WWE style or anything like that. It doesn't look like it to me. But if he is, putting him with somebody as, you know, experienced as Dante Chen, I think, and who's been in the system as long as Dante Chen, I think is probably a good idea. Again, match was great. Good to see Dante Chen get as much offense as he did, but you know, like Kelly said earlier, Ethan Page's offense was just a little bit stronger and allowed him to pick up the win. Oro Mensa, everything that they've been doing with Oro the past, I don't know what, 3-4 weeks or so, however long it's been since Noam Dar has been out. I really dig it. They're trying to make Oro Mensa a much bigger star than he was. You know, he was always, at least in my mind, just kind of like Noam Dar's sidekick, you know, and just kind of part of Metaphor. But now it's almost like he's, I don't want to say the leader of Metaphor because he's not. Like, I still think of Noam Dar as a leader in my head, but it's like he's kind of stepping up into that role a little bit while Noam Dar's out. So like I said, I dig it. I think, you know, having them tell us the story of his background and things like that a handful of weeks ago really started to cement that for me in terms of him being more of a, I don't want to say main event player because it still doesn't feel like he belongs in the main event, you know, fighting for the title. But by the same point, you know, they've done a great job building him up to feel much much more important than just, you know, a mid carder or a lower mid carder or something like that. You know, so again, whenever this match does happen between Oro Mensa and Ethan Page for the NXT title, which is kind of, it's the direction that it looks like they're going to wind up going. Whenever it does wind up happening, like you said, I think it's going to wind up being, you know, on something like the Great American Bash, which is, you know, one of the TV PLEs, one of the PLE lights as we call them. You know, it's not on Peacock; it's still on, you know, on USA, or actually, like I said earlier, it's going to be on Sci-Fi this time. So you know, which makes sense. You know, if anything, putting it on Great American Bash or even just on regular TV, like they did with Dante Chen tonight, I think probably makes the most sense. I have a feeling Ethan Page and Trick Williams, their feud is not quite over yet. We saw, you know, we haven't brought it up yet, but we saw a segment where Trick Williams was FaceTiming Ilya Dragunov, who was the man that he won the NXT title off of. And he was looking to get a little bit of advice and things from Ilya, you know, regarding Ethan Page and the title scene. So to me, that says that he's not done hunting for the title. He's not done with Ethan Page. And my guess is whatever the next PLE is, probably, you know, whatever it is, SummerSlam weekend or whatever, not Great American Bash, but whatever
No
the
Mercy.
next, No Mercy. So the next
September
PLE.
1st. September 1st is No Mercy, and I think that's the next one.
Okay, I think that sounds right. Um, so we'll say it's No Mercy. So I think we're going to wind up seeing Trick Williams and Ethan Page and No Mercy. Who knows? They may wind up, weaseling another name or two in there, as they like to do from time to time. But I think we'll wind up seeing Trick Williams recapture the title before, maybe before going up to the main roster. Like maybe around WrestleMania time or something like that, because I think he's ready. I'd like to see him hang out more in NXT than that, because I think right now he's doing a great job as kind of the face of NXT. He's getting the biggest pops of the night, consistently. So I hate to see him leave NXT and whatnot, but he can't stay forever. And I think he's certainly ready for it if they were to call him up even tomorrow. But that's where I think this is going to wind up going. We're going to see something, between Trick Williams and Ethan Page at the next Peacock PLE. PPLE? No, I don't like that. I still want to call them pay-per-views. I don't know. And this thing with Oro Mensa, this is kind of just filler to get us there.
You can email us at pwtorchnxt@gmail.com. This one comes from Jared Buhager. Hi, team. It's JB from Detroit. Number one, is Oba Femi being booked so strong that he feels like a more legitimate NXT champion than Ethan Page does? Vic even closed the match with a flub, calling Femi our NXT champion. Not that it is uncommon for Vic. Yes, I was going to say that if JB didn't. Number two, are we getting the right dose of Joe Hendry right now? Should he be a weekly fixture? I do worry about him potentially oversaturating his overness. As always, love the show and go VIP. I will admit, I thought both of these things during the show. I did think about Oba Femi and how unstoppable he is, but you can do that. In the days when they had way fewer championships, Andre the Giant was kept undefeated for years, and they didn't have him win any championships, but you could kind of get away with that more in the territory era, where he would just go somewhere, dominate, not challenge, and it wouldn't be a big deal because he wasn't going to be there for very long anyway, or he would challenge and win by disqualification, whatever you need him to do, as long as they had a heel champion, they could do that one. So does he feel like a bigger deal? I think that's inevitable based on the kind of characters that these two are, because Oba is the definition of dominant. And then on the other side of the coin, chicken shit heel is exactly what Ethan Page is there for. That is the part he is supposed to play, and he does. So I think that there. Joe Hendry I'm not worried about him being oversaturated yet. I think this is the right amount of times for him to be on the show. If he's in multiple segments every week, yes, that will be too much, but those segments were pretty brief this time. When they realized it stopped being cute and started being just a tiny bit irritating and predictable, then they have to back off. And hopefully, and wrestling is not known for its restraint, but maybe, Nate, on this email.
All right. So on the first question about Oba Femi being booked strongly, I think that Oba Femi personally, the way that I'm looking at it, he does feel like more of a legitimate champion than Ethan Page for me. Maybe that's because I'm still not overly familiar with the Ethan Page body of work. I don't keep up with AEW very much. I'll watch a pay-per-view with my friends here and there, but that's about it. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's because Ethan Page just kind of came in and won the title. So to me, maybe subconsciously it's like he hasn't earned that yet or something like that. But Oba Femi right now, I mean, he's unstoppable. He's an absolute beast. He's a monster. And like I said a little bit earlier, I feel like he needs to be built to be an attraction. Once he hits the main roster, in a year or two or however long it is, that's what I want to see for him. I don't want to see him, and under Vince McMahon, that might have this may have happened where he gets called up, he's this monster down at NXT, and then all of a sudden he's jobbing to somebody, you know uh like Otis or something like that, that might be somewhat believable, but at the same time, Oba Femi probably should kind of crush Otis or something like that. So that's not what I want to see under Triple H. And actually, I saw it a little bit ago. Oh yeah, Brock Benningfield. He said something about they shouldn't call Trick up unless they have something for him. Talking about what I was talking about with Trick a little bit ago, but he says so far he trusts Triple H, and that's kind of where I'm at. I haven't really seen under the Triple H era, somebody get called up from NXT and then just flounder. Usually that, I mean, Tiffany Stratton and Carmelo Hayes, things like that.
I will throw Kiana James's name in there.
Yeah. Okay. All
they
right.
brought her up and they had no plan. And I guess they thought that when they drafted her early, that that would kind of force them to think of her front and center. I don't know the goings on backstage, what's happening there, why they're not doing anything with her. I thought she was somewhat an auspicious pick to move up. I don't know. I've always been lukewarm on her at best, even though the work was pretty much there at the end. And I was like, if they're going to call her up, it might as well be now. I think she is plateauing. I think she can be kind of a Carmella light or some such. So that is the one I would point to when I would say it's not always going to be seamless.
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's very true. But where I completely agree with you there, but Kiana James and Oba Femi are very different characters. And I feel like with Oba Femi and just kind of how much of a monster they're building him up to be, I mean, I feel like he's going to be kind of at that Gunther level where, when they finally call him up, he's going to be somebody that, once he's beaten, it's a big deal. I don't think he'll touch, the 666-day Intercontinental title reign with his North American title. But I'm kind of hoping once he does get called up to the main roster, that's what's in store for him. More often than not, I feel like Triple H does a great job. But like you said, Kiana James, it's a good call out because I certainly wasn't thinking about that. In terms of Joe Hendry getting the right dose of Joe Hendry right now, I think so. I think it certainly works. People want to see him. I mean, the theme song itself, if he, matter of fact, if you haven't seen it, take a little bit of time, watch the interview between Joe Hendry and Chris Van Vliet. It goes put out maybe a week or two ago, and Joe Hendry talks about what went into making the song and why he made it the way that he made it. And he basically starts talking about channeling Freddie Mercury in a way, and listening to Bohemian Rhapsody and some of the other songs that Queen put out and figuring out ways of actually capturing an audience. It's super, super interesting. But I think it's a combination of his charisma and that song right now that is getting him over big time. I mean, to the point where that song is on the charts in the UK. At least it was. I don't know if it still is, which is absolutely insane to me. A wrestling theme actually getting onto the charts in playing on the radio and things. It's insane. But so I think capitalizing on that is a great idea. They're not oversaturating him right yet. They've had him. It's usually either a segment or two that they have him on the show. And it's usually, well, I want to say a big deal. It wasn't necessarily a big deal tonight, but unexpected. And I think as long as they kind of keep doing it like the way that they have been doing it, it probably should be okay. If it starts to get a little bit more, and all of a sudden, Joe Hendry showing up in like 6 or 7 segments or something like that, which I don't think is going to wind up happening. But yeah, it's going to get a little bit overkill. Or if they keep just doing the same thing week in and week out, even if he's only appearing once or twice, it's probably going to start to feel a little old. But right now, I think they keep doing what they're doing with him. Maybe have him in a match here or two, a match or two here and there, and kind of capitalize on his popularity right now. Because, quite frankly, I think Joe Hendry, and this might be a bold claim, but Joe Hendry may be more popular than some of their top NXT guys right now. So, in terms of like the general wrestling audience, so I think it's a good idea to kind of keep him in that what am I trying to say? Keep him front and center. There we go.
There you go. One of the things I typed about Hendry is this a talent exchange, or is this going to turn into a talent raid? Because the way they're using the Rascalz and the way they're using Joe Hendry, how would they not just want to have them around? But we will cross that road when we come to it. Okay, Kevin Catani emails us thus: salutations, gents. I got to tonight's episode late, but the real topic on everyone's mind is, when will Stephanie Verker and Julia start wrecking shop on the NXT women's division? Thanks as always. Go VIP and listen to 8YB. Office hours are now over. The Professor, Kevin P. Catani, PhD. Yeah, I don't know when we're going to see old Steph and Julia show up, but they were mentioned today twice, and both times in the same breath, which I thought was pretty interesting. Everyone knows they're on their way, and yeah, these are, I don't know for how many people these are just names, but watching New Japan and the companies that they align with, some I've seen a decent amount of them. Azan White in the chat says visas need to be worked out first. So there you go. I don't pay attention to those things, so I didn't know why for sure that they weren't on TV. I figure they'll want to wait for the right moment, and they will want that regardless. But there you go. They will wreck shop, and I will.
Brock, man.
Sorry, Brock got me again. In the chat, he says Veer is coming. Probably not true anymore, but it's wrestling. Anything can happen. So, yeah, these two, I would have thought it possible that one or both could leapfrog NXT if they wanted to do things that way. But they mentioned them both on NXT, so that may not happen. And I think it's very, very, I think it should happen extremely rarely that somebody skips it. And even though Jade did, she was obviously working on things a lot while being held back from TV, because they knew that they could have something big in her if they do that right. So I agree with not having too many people jump the line, but if they were able, then it could be one or either of these women. Any thoughts on when you are expecting to see either of them, Nate? And I know we talked Julia, who you don't know a lot about. Do you know much about Stephanie Verker?
To be honest with you, I don't. Yeah, when I actually saw her name come up, was it earlier in this week, last week, whenever it was that they announced the signing, I was like, I don't know who that is. So I did a little bit of Googling and some YouTubing, and I'm a little familiar. But I've never sat down and like watched one of her matches, or even Julia's for that matter, front to back. When it comes to wrestling, if it's not NXT or Raw or SmackDown, I'm probably not watching, mostly because there's so much wrestling out there right now. I would spend my entire life watching wrestling, and I do have other hobbies and things that I like to do from time to time, believe it or not. Um, but in terms of when they're probably coming, I'm going to say sooner rather than later. If you asked me that question prior to tonight, I would have said, I don't know, probably soon, but I don't know. Um, Now tonight, especially after Roxanne Perez called them both out, and I think there was one other segment too. I know you said they were brought up twice. I remember them being brought up twice, but I only remember the Roxanne segment right now. But with Roxy bringing them up, I'm thinking that they're probably gonna show up sooner rather than later. Whether that be, SummerSlam weekend or you know, I don't know exactly when, but they wouldn't be bringing them up on TV if they were going to show up in December, or WrestleMania time or something like that. They wouldn't be mentioning them on TV just yet. At least I don't think. Maybe it's to capitalize on some of the, the hubbub and all of the news and things surrounding, both Stephanie Vacker and Julia. But I it's wrestling. You really don't bring people up until you're ready to use them. And when I say bring them up, I don't mean to the main roster. I just meant talking about them. You don't really do that until you're ready to use them. So my guess is we'll wind up seeing them sooner rather than later. Whether they appear at the same time or we see one and then the other, that's the question. But I did think it was curious that they were brought up, as Kelly said earlier, brought up in the same breath. So to me, that sounds like they're going to wind up showing up on NXT, either whether it be NXT TV or a premium live event or something like that in the near future, and wind up probably challenging Roxanne Perez for the belt. I know we've been talking about Julia for a while on the show to be potentially Roxanne's next competitor. A name that I keep forgetting about, but we've been talking about it. So, I think it makes sense for her to kind of show up and kind of be put into that spotlight. In terms of them just kind of leapfrogging NXT, going to the main roster, like Kelly was talking about a little bit ago, I am not against it, but I also think that it's probably a good idea for some talent to at least spend a little bit of time in NXT. Learn the WWE way of doing things. I don't know if New Japan, and the only reason that this is on my brain today was I was watching Stevie Richards has a new YouTube channel, and I was watching one of his videos today, and he was talking about working in different size rings. How it was different from coming from WCW and ECW, where they had 16 and 18 foot, 16 by 16 and 18 by 18 foot rings. WWE uses 20 by 20. So maybe something like that. Just kind of getting used to getting used to everything. But I think it's a good idea to come through NXT and get a little bit of experience with WWE under their belt first before going to the main roster. Sure, people can do it. We saw people like AJ Styles do it, but I was going to say Jade Cargill, but especially with somebody like Jade, I think, like you said, I think they were certainly doing a lot of work with her behind the scenes before she hit the main roster. The name value was there, but she still needed some work in the ring. So I think that makes sense. But I'm looking forward to seeing both of them join NXT. I think the women's division, while it's strong, I think could use a little bit of an injection of star power. And from what it sounds like, these two could certainly do it.
And learning production is a big part of that too.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's got a hard cam, but it's a different kind of episodic show. So there are things to learn that it will be valuable for them to learn. But again, these two could have been keep them away from TV for a bit and bring them up in a special moment. But the fact that they've already brought them up would suggest that that is not what they are going to do. We have one more email. It's from Azam White. Greetings, NXT crew. I hope this email finds you well. Number one, in all the years Pete Dunne has been a part of NXT, he has never really taken center stage. This heel Pete Dunne could be what Trick Williams needs to bring a more serious level to his character. I was going to say he definitely was center stage, but I guess that was more NXT UK, wasn't it? Which I did watch all the way through. So there you go. Number two, what do you think about no interactions between the Rascalz and the No Quarter Catch crew on NXT while they are feuding on TNA TV? Will this be the strategy going forward while with this relationship? I don't think that's a bad idea, because if you're getting it on one, what do you care if you're not getting it in the other? If you're getting it in the other, it is interesting that that's happening and that they're not doing that. On the other side of that coin, you could further that feud, and then people would be more likely to watch the other one, which I think is the goal. And then on the other side of that coin, I guess this coin has three sides. Why would you promote a match that you aren't going to pay off on your show because it's going to be paid off on the other show? Number three, is Oba Femi the most naturally made guy for WWE style we have seen in a long time? Honestly, he seems the type of one who could be part of that OVW classic back in the day with Cena, Randy Orton, Brock, Dave Bautista, and Shelton Benjamin from Azan in St. Louis. Don't forget, NXT will be moving its show to its original home, the Sci-Fi Channel, in the next weeks. Yes, Oba Femi is definitely cut from the right cloth. He is where he should be. He's larger than life. He can be in those Samoa Joe, Brock Lesnar, Goldberg type main events, and he can do long form matches as well. And yes, the group you brought up, that OVW group you brought up, that it's still hard to believe we're all there at the same time. Yeah, he would have fit right the hell in with them. Nate, on Azan's email.
So Pete Dunne, you're right. I mean, he really never has taken center stage before in NXT. I want to say he's had at least a title opportunity, but as I'm saying it, I'm like, I don't know if he has. So
he was tag champion with Matt Riddle, but then I believe
I meant NXT injury,
title. Yeah, that was NXT.
Yeah, well, I meant like the NXT championship,
the NXT championship.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, like,
didn't do that.
Okay, all right. So, like I was saying to myself, I'm like, it sounds right that he had one, but at the same time, it didn't. But so in terms of taking center stage, in a main event style feud or anything like that, he certainly has, and he's kind of been more of a, I don't want to say a bit player, but NXT tag team champions and obviously NXT UK champion and things like that. Heritage Cup and stuff. But I don't know. I would love to see him get a bit more time in the spotlight. I think the thing that might hold him back is his, well, I was going to say mic work, but like, I don't feel like they give him a lot of time to really talk. I feel like he can talk on the mic. He's certainly not the greatest in the world, but a lot of the times we just get a stoic, Pete Dunne, and I think that's probably, we're going to get more of that now that he's leaning heel both on the main roster and then here in NXT. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this kind of brings out in Pete Dunne. But I agree with Azan. I think Pete Dunne could be, a really, really good opponent for Trick Williams to overcome. I wouldn't expect Pete Dunne to get, the win over that feud. I would expect it to be Trick Williams if that is the direction that they go, to kind of inject a little bit of, well, maybe not, let's say light a fire under his ass a little bit, to get his title back, to get, for Trick Williams to beat Ethan Page. I think that could be an interesting feud as a bit of a filler, since Ethan Page is probably going to be tied up with Oro Mensah as filler for, the foreseeable future, next few weeks or whatever. And then, Trick Williams kind of, does this thing with Pete Dunne, builds up his confidence a little bit more. Maybe confidence isn't the right word, because I don't think he's necessarily lacking that, but but he builds himself up a little bit more to then be able to take on Ethan Page, feel, confident in himself that he's going to be able to win, and then potentially win the title back. I would like to see him be able to be called a two-time NXT champion. I think that would really be a nice feather in the cap for Trick Williams. Not that I'm a big fan of them playing hot potato with the title, but Trick Williams, he had a very short NXT North American Championship run. He had a very short NXT title run. So I think being able to at least call him a two-time champion, and maybe even if his second run still only a few months, being able to call him a two-time champion would be a bit more of a feather in his cap there. What do I think about no interactions between the Rascalz and No Quarter Catch Crew on NXT while they're feuding on TNA? I mean, yeah, I don't know. It does seem a little bit weird. Like, you would kind of almost expect them to kind of continue that crossover. I mean, they did that with Tatum Paxley, showing up against Jordan Grace. And they kind of, weaved that in a little bit to NXT TV. So you would think with this pairing, this partnership between TNA and WWE, NXT specifically, you would think that maybe there would be a little bit more crossover on the TV shows, but I didn't really think about it until Kelly said it a little bit ago. Why promote something on your show that isn't going to be paid off on your show? The cross promotion is great, but by the same token, I'm sure TNA is still trying to get the best they can possibly get out of this deal, and they don't necessarily want to give WWE all of the big matches and big feuds and things like that. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of give and take. Sure, NXT, they had the Jordan Grace match and things like that, but I still think that TNA needs to get some benefit from it as well. I'm not necessarily watching TNA, as I've said earlier. NXT is my bread and butter. Raw, SmackDown when I can, and then that's about it. To try to keep up with things otherwise. But I think it would make sense for TNA to try and get as much out of this partnership as they possibly can to boost their own ratings. They're not the number 2 company in US anymore. They're far from it. So, trying to do anything they can to boost ratings and viewership and things like that, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I have not missed an episode of NXT in years. I have not missed any New Japan show in 8 years, and I haven't missed Raw or SmackDown in like 4 months. I think I'm watching too much wrestling, Nate.
Maybe a little bit.
But the only thing I think is like, I could probably watch more. I could stand to watch more.
What would the wife think about that?
She'd go along with it. She would sit in the room and occasionally talk to me about other stuff. She's like, you don't have to cover this, do you? So I can at least talk to you during like some of these segments. Oh boy. Okay. So Kelly Kincaid talked to Kalani Jordan, and Wendy Chu showed up. Headless doll. That was part of today's storyline. And the headless doll was given her head back by Tatum Paxley, who had apparently swiped it. Tatum Paxley with a singles win on this show. How do you feel if you're Izzy Dame? You were doing something with oh gosh, I just said her name, Kiana James, not that long ago, and now neither of you are doing much of anything. But Wendy Chu maybe starting some kind of alliance with Tatum Paxley. It would make sense if she is. But at any rate, Tatum Paxley tries to get Kalani Jordan to play with dolls with her. And Kalani said, we're too old for that. And so Tatum put down the Barbie and picked up a doll that looked a little bit more like Kalani. So I guess they're keeping her creepy. And I don't know if she's continuing the thing, if she's doing something with Wendy Chu, but it seems like they could, and it seems like they should, because then Wendy can stay silent, which I think she mostly should. And Paxton can do a little bit of the talking, even though Wendy Chu is a decent talker, but in this role, I think she should do as little of it as possible because I think that will help it work a little bit. So on Creepy Girls, Nate.
Yes, creepy girls. So I absolutely love what they're doing with Tatum Paxley right now. I mean, I feel like she's really falling into this character, or has fell into this character for that matter. Before she kind of found this character, I mean, I feel like she was just another face in NXT, and I don't even mean that in terms of baby face. I just mean another face on the show. But now that she's found this character, it's creepy, not like the Wyatt Six creepy, but like just kind of weird girl creepy. But it works. I think it really works for her. You're not really sure where she's going to pop up, what she's going to do, what she's going to be, what she might say or anything like that. So I really like this. With the thing with the Kalani Jordan, I'm kind of wondering if now, now that she's picked up the doll, but that kind of looks a little bit more like Kalani Jordan, does that mean she's going to start, stalking Kalani Jordan? Does that mean she's going to try and come after the women's North American title? And I think probably. I still think that there's definitely a feud there between her and Wendy Chu as well. I don't think Wendy Chu is going to take the fact that a doll was stolen from her and decapitated very well. I also can't believe that that's a angle I'm talking about right now, but I am. So there we go. In terms of the match, Tatum Paxley and Izzy Dame, I'll be honest with you, I forgot that it happened until you mentioned it. So that's probably what I got to say about that match. I don't think it was a bad match by any stretch of the imagination, but it was largely forgettable for me. So
Tatum's finishing move is cool, dude.
It really is cool. I will definitely give you that. It is really cool.
I did not know how to explain it in my recap. Like I didn't even know where to start. So I just said,
it's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
You literally wrote, it's kind of hard to explain, but it looks cool.
It is. So that was that. Lola Vice defeated JC Jane. This was brief, folks. JC was on top of the world at one point. She is not right now. So she got flattened in 244 by Lola Vice, but they want to keep Lola Vice super strong. So even JC Jane was somebody worth sacrificing to her. JC Jane and the rest of her evil trio, Fallon Henley. I mean, is it JC's? JC kind of acts like she's front and center, but I don't know. I feel like both of the other two could end up being bigger stars than JC. And it's not a cut on JC. I think she's a perfectly cromulent heel, but I really like Fallon, and Jasmine's coming along fairly quickly for somebody who has not been there for very long. I like a weird what she's doing. Yep, Jasmine. So those three attack Lola Vice afterwards, but the save is made, thankfully, by exactly two women. That way they can make it a 3-on-3. Wouldn't want it to be more or less. Sol Ruka and Carmen Petrovic. So we'll get a 3-on-3 soon. I don't know if it'll be next week, but it'll be soon. And anything on Lola Vice and I guess this budding 6-woman feud?
Yeah, not a whole heck of a lot, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's very smart to keep Lola Vice, strong here. She doesn't necessarily do it for me, but I definitely see why people enjoy her as much as they do. It's she's got charisma. She has, and I mean, hell, the MMA training is really translating into pro wrestling very well. So I think, I think it's smart of them to keep Lola Vice strong. Like you said, JC Jane, she's another name that's been in NXT for quite a while at this point. She was part of a very popular group for a bit in Toxic Attraction, but she's fallen from grace a little bit. Not really sure what this means for her. Maybe they're trying I was going to say maybe they're waiting for her nose to heal, but I'm almost at this point her nose probably is healed, and they've just got the mask on her for story purposes here, especially where Cody Rhodes gave her a mask. She'll probably end up wearing that for quite some time. Um, but in terms of the six women feud, I I'm intrigued. It's by no means one of the more one of the things that I'm really looking forward to on the show, but I'm definitely intrigued by it. Kind of having the quote old guard, fight the rookies, even though one of the old guard is kind of a rookie, but that's neither here nor there. Um, it's I think it should make for an interesting match once we get there, but for me, largely this is kind of like filler TV. They haven't given me a story that has really, really sucked me in yet to this particular feud. So, it is what it is. As long as, Lola Vice comes out of this looking strong, I think that is what really matters. The other women, uh, sure, I think, it would be good for them to kind of get a bit of a rub as well, especially Carmen Petrovic, because again, very similar to Izzy Dame, and I didn't mention this earlier, but I mean, if you put Izzy Dame in a lineup of women, I couldn't pick her out. And it's kind of the same thing with me and Carmen Petrovic right now. They're a little forgettable. So I think giving them a feud, well, in this case, somebody like Carmen Petrovic, a feud that is, with somebody that they're looking to push, like Lola Vice, is probably going to help her by proxy too. Give her a little bit more TV time, and hopefully make her a little bit more recognizable to the audience. So I think that's all I got to say about that.
Last week, my wife was watching with me fairly closely, which she doesn't usually do, even if she's in the room, which she usually is, and said about Carmen, she looks like she could be Canadian. And I said, well, she is. And she said, she looks like she could be family with, and then she explained a wrestler and couldn't remember her name. And I was like, Natalia? She's like, yeah. And I said, well, she
That's
just got
weird.
done being in a storyline with Natalia. So I guess good job.
Yeah.
There you go. She just saw something about her that reminded her of Natalia. Meechin and the OC versus OTM. The baby faces, are there baby faces in this? I don't know. But the ones who played babyface in the match did win this, as OTM firmly played heel, and Luke Gallows, strangely, was your face in peril, which is probably not a position that he plays very often in tag team
No.
wrestling, but especially, as a heel. But that was a thing that happened, and it was 5:57, and they didn't linger on this afterwards. And I guess all I will say is I like to see Jada Parker. Anything on this six person?
Yeah, I don't think it was a bad match by any stretch. I have trouble getting into mixed tag team matches because I feel like when, the guy tags out and girls got to come in, it completely changes the momentum of the match.
It's a reset. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no, like, the in peril thing is over because it's a reset. Yeah.
exactly. So it's hard for me to get really into them as much as I do, traditional tag team match or 6-man tag or something like that. That said, I mean, I still enjoyed the match. I love Meechin, so I'm always happy to see her, doing what she's doing here in NXT.
Are you pro pigtails on Meechin, or are you anti pigtails on Meechin?
I'll go with pro. I'll go with pro.
I think I
I'm
am
okay with that.
too. It's
Yeah, because
it's an
it's kind of
interesting.
well, it's kind of like it's I don't know. I mean, it's that traditional like innocent type look, but she can kick your ass.
Right.
So
I
I
think
think
that's
it
why
works.
she's getting away with it.
Yeah, I
If
think
she
it
was
works.
some like if she was some like teeny bopper chick, it would just look desperate.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%,
But it
100%.
looks,
So
but it's kind of, I think she's
she
getting
can
away
pull it
with it
off.
as a badass. Yep.
Yeah, no, 100%. But you know, like you said as well, Jada Parker, she's coming along incredibly well. I think again, I think she's one where the sky is probably the limit. I almost think that OTM might even be holding her back, um, because I feel like with her progression in the ring as well as on the mic and in backstage segments and things like that, like she just knows her character. I feel like with Jada Parker, it's probably, as they say, it's probably her just dialed up to 11.
I
Um,
like Bronco and Lucian, but she
yeah,
can be a real star.
absolutely. Like as good as they are, Brock just said it in the chat. Parker gets it, and yeah, I not that Bronco and Lima don't, or Nima. I said Lima. Bronco and Nima don't.
Well, that's
Um,
the same guy. Bronco
oh,
Nima.
yeah, you're right. Price and Nima. It's another Brooks Jensen thing. Brooks and Briggs. Um, but like I said, not that I don't think that they don't have it, but Jada Parker stands out. She definitely stands out when she's standing next to the two of them, or even in the ring with them. She's certainly a standout. What I thought was interesting here is the fact that OTM loses again. I don't know, and they were kind of playing this up on commentary where this was going to be like the finish to the feud. That like they're facing off once again. I think Vic might even said for the last time. Don't quote me on that, but for some reason I remember that. Um, and if that's the case, and this is the last time that they're supposedly in the ring, why are we putting over the veteran team and not the new guys, the new team? So that's a
Although it
little
was
bit.
funny, Vic says another win for the OC for Gallows and Anderson, and I'm like, another after what?
Yeah, right.
What have
And
they
that's
been winning?
well, and that's the thing. It's like they haven't really been winning. I've talked a lot about on the show about seeing Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, getting some wins and making them feel more of a threat because they have been defined down so much, on the main roster, and they really haven't been picking up many wins down here in NXT. So it's like they didn't really build them up at all, and now OTM just lost to them. So what does that say about OTM? Um, I would like to potentially see one more match between these guys with some higher stakes, whether it be a stipulation match or something like that, and actually have OTM come out victorious, and cleanly, because I think that's going to help kind of propel them up the card a little bit. The OC, I mean, they're the OC. They can take a loss, no problem, get right back up, and they're going to be as fine as they're going to be. But OTM, they're still, an untested commodity. They're still trying to get over and kind of get their legs under them. So I'm hoping that's the direction that they wind up going. So I really like what Jada Parker and OTM bring to the table. I think I think Price and Neiman need a little bit, maybe a little bit more polish, but that's just going to come with time. So like I'm not super worried about that at all. Um, but at least in the short term, I would really like to see OTM get a few more wins, a few more notches in their belt there, and become a bit more of a dominating tag team.
Vic at one point referred to Luke Gallows as Doc. I don't know if he is or is not allowed to, but I was just thinking how amusing it was. Surely there are people watching this show who have no idea he's called Doc.
And don't call me Shirley.
Yes, I will not, Leslie. Okay, we had Charlie Dempsey. He talked to D'Angelo. How do you get rid of a problem when somebody saw you doing something? And he said, just take him for a swim. Then he said it was a woman, and D'Angelo was like, nope, I'm out. This scene, probably too cute, too silly, and still worked for me. So there you go. And New Quarter Catch Club had a scene. No Quarter Catch Club had a scene with Wren Sinclair later. This is the most confident and herself that Wren has been in front of us by a lot. By the way, she's been very, very bland on the mic and forgettable. And I just thought her eagerness to be with this group and her playfulness with Miles Bourne was pretty good stuff. Lexis King wants to fight Eddie Thorpe because music. Okay, that's probably not where we thought Lexis King would be at this point, but it is. And who is the thirstiest man on NXT in a week where Idris Nofe and Malik Blade are not there? Well, it's got to be Ashante Adonis because he was all over Jakara Jackson. In his defense, it's Jakara Jackson. All right. So anything on those backstage segments? Oh, gosh. And Roxanne Perez and Thea Hale had a relatively critical talk segment as well. So on those last few scenes. You're muted, my friend.
That's weird because I don't remember hitting the mute button this time. So what the hell was I just saying? So the Wren Sinclair stuff I thought was great. Obviously it started a little bit earlier in the night, with Charlie Dempsey and Tony D'Angelo and whatnot. But for me, that was like a largely forgettable segment. But when we actually saw Wren Sinclair show up with the No Quarter Catch crew, like that's a memorable segment. I think she did a fantastic job just kind of getting in there. She didn't seem uncomfortable by any stretch of the imagination. So if she was, props to her for some great acting right there. But she gets in, she's talking about how she wants to join the group. She's playing around, like she's gonna start wrestling with Miles Bourne. I thought that was probably the most interesting No Quarter Catch crew seemed in a little while, especially since losing Drew Gulak, with his kind of unceremonious exit from the company. So yeah, and the fact that now Damon Kemp's gone, they've replaced him with Tavion Heights. So right now, No Quarter Catch crew to me just seems like they're floundering. So an injection of energy like Wren Sinclair, I think is a great idea. I think it'd be cool to see a woman in that, in that faction as well. Very similar to like Diamond Mine, and we saw Ivy Nile as kind of the token woman there. I think it would be kind of an interesting spot for Wren Sinclair. She's not really doing much of anything else, so let's give her something to do, something to sink her teeth into. And she showed tonight that she has chemistry with those three guys. So I think that could certainly be a great pairing for Wren Sinclair and No Quarter Catch crew. But then I forget the next segment you mentioned, but the one after that was Roxanne Perez and Thea Hale. Again, Roxanne Perez has fallen into her heel character in such a fantastic way. As we've said many times in the show, as a face, I always felt like she was floundering is not the right word, because obviously she still had success. She became women's champion and all of that, but like I never bought into her as a face. She just
I think
never
she was
seemed.
Miscast.
I completely agree.
She looks like she should be able to play a babyface, and she just can't.
Yeah. And I'm sure she's probably like the sweetest person in the world in real life, and sometimes it just doesn't translate to trying to portray that on TV.
Finn Balor is one of the nicest guys in the world, and he
Yeah.
doesn't know how to play a babyface either. He's made to
Yep.
be a heel. Yep.
100%. That's actually, it's a great example. So I, like you said, I think she was definitely miscast as a babyface. But in a way, I think it's a good thing, because now we get to see just how much she's evolved since her debut to now. How different her championship run feels then than it does now. Because back then, just trying to be that fighting champion that was happy to be here and fulfilling her lifelong dream, we've heard that story so many times at this point. And whether it was true or not, we've heard that story so many times from so many different people. So I think between that and then just kind of her always feeling a little bit robotic, for lack of a better term, on the mic, as a face, really just, made me want more for Roxanne Perez. But now she is, I mean, she's, I think, the perfect heel. She knows her character. She's a little bit of a chicken shit heel, but when comes time to like actually lace up the boots and defend that title, or get in the ring or what have you, she does it. And she's intense, and she looks like somebody that's going to be tough to beat. I mean, even going into the match against Jordan Grace, she looked like the underdog. She was the underdog, um, but she still put on a believable match, and obviously, kept her title. Um, so, and then Thea Hale. Now, Thea Hale, she's been in a title picture before. We never thought she had a chance in hell to win the title. I still don't, if that's where they wind up going with her in the meantime, before we wind up seeing Stephanie Vaquer and Julia show up here in NXT. But it kind of feels like that might be the way they go, Roxanne and Thea Hale for the women's title. I think Thea may have a bit more of a chance to win, but I still don't think she has a chance in hell of actually winning this title. I think leaving it on Roxanne Perez, and then Julia and/or Stephanie being the person to, or one of them being the person to take it off of her, or be the next big feud for her. It's
I
probably
would give Thea a big chance if they weren't waiting in the wings.
Exactly. That's kind of where I was getting. If we weren't talking about them, with everything Thea Hale's been through, I'd give her at least like a 30%, 40% chance of winning. I'd still lean towards Roxanne Perez, but I didn't think Ethan Page was going to beat Trick Williams. They kind of like doing some shock value things here and there, kind of keep us on our toes, which I am all for in pro wrestling. There's so many times where we've come on this show, or we're on Wade's post show or something like that, and I just feel like I can predict what's going on. And every match that I watch, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I knew it's going to happen there. I knew it was going to happen there. Because they were just kind of so predictable for so long. But now, you know, with Triple H kind of in charge of creative and Shawn Michaels down in NXT, I feel like they do a much better job booking in a way where you just don't know. I mean, and sometimes we do, and we're accurate with what we think is going to happen. But sometimes, again, Kalani Jordan was another example. We did not pin her for winning the title, the North American title. She was literally the last person in that match that I thought was going to win it, and they put the title on her, and I think it was a great choice. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. What was the second segment? There was another segment that I couldn't remember.
Thirsty Ashante.
Ah, yes. Yeah, I don't have much really to talk about there. Is, I guess, cool to see, Ashante back in NXT. I'm assuming this means we're going to see a pairing between Ashante and Cedric here in NXT, which works for me. I'd like, actually, now that I think about it, like seeing the two of them against Idris and Enofe. I think would just be a hell of a match.
Idris and Enofe are the same.
Oh my God, I did it again. Enofe and Blade. I was like, wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me like Enofe and Ashante are the same person? I'm like, no, they're not. I gotta sleep. But I think that could be a hell of a match. I don't know really where they'd go with it from there. I'm just thinking about actual match quality. But yeah, I think that's really all I got with that segment.
Brock Benningfield in the chat says, I'm glad Cedric found a place. And oh my God, so am I. I really, really like Cedric Alexander. I understand what sort of limitations he has, like on the mic in that department, but I really like him. I've always pulled for him, and I always will. I believe that is our show. I'm Kelly Wells. You can find me on social media at Spooky Milk or at SpookyMilk.game. Go ahead, Nate.
Okay, You were breaking up a little bit there. So I wasn't sure. But yep, at Nate Lindberg on Twitter, NateLindberg.com. Check out some of the things that I do. And yeah, there we go.
Cheers. We'll see you in 7.